Welcome to another episode of the Legal Ops podcast, a show about all things legal operations, legal technology, and legal business. This is the first longer episode under new management. I am your host, Daryl Osach, and I am super excited to be joined today by JP from LegalOn Technologies out of chilly, sunny Tokyo, Japan. JP, hello, welcome.
Hi there, Earl.
Hello. Can you give the audience a quick sort of a quick introduction? Who you are, what you do?
Sure. So, JP Biard with LegalOn Technologies. LegalOn Technologies, a legal tech company founded out of Japan, now operating globally with our global operations led from our San Francisco headquarters. And I am responsible for global strategy. Leading strategy with very much of a focus on our global expansion, our global operation.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, and thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, look, I mean, global. Already heard 2 or 3 times. I feel like, how long have you been at LegalOn now?
Close to 3 years.
4, 3 years. 3 years. Is it fair to say a ton of growth expansion?
It's been a real special story for us. So we're happy to serve over 6,500 corporates now. So it's been keeping us very busy. And as you know, especially within the past 2 years, Gen AI has really made everyone realize that review can be made a lot better by using AI.
Yeah.
That
Preach.
Yeah. And that lawyers and legal teams have higher values areas to focus on. We were discussing this before, but nobody goes to law school to review NDAs.
Hey! I specifically went to law school only to do NDAs, and I'm very upset that I ended up in legal operations. Yeah, dude, that's fantastic. I mean, look, 6,500 customers. I mean, 6,500 anything is 6,500 yen is a good dinner. 6,500 anything is a big number, and that's just amazing growth for LegalOn. LegalOn is a bit of an unusual player in sort of legal operations and legal technology specifically. I was really excited to get you as a first guest to kind of frame the legal operations market very much globally. Again, your introduction, kind of global. LegalOn started in Japan and then has pushed to the American market. I think you might know better than me, but at least that's a rare case, if not, very, very unusual. Can you tell me a bit about the strategy, the decision making? Obviously, they're growing global ambitions. So just talk to me about LegalOn's push into America.
Sure. Well, maybe for context, so to make sure that everyone knows about LegalOn, so we do legal AI for contract review. This is where we started 7 years ago. This has been really the core of our focus. In practice, we've expanded and we do a little more, but this is really our roots and where we come from. So yes, it's very unusual to see a Japanese company in that space, or a Japanese legal tech to be relevant globally. And things have happened in an interesting way, right? So in 2018, when we launched the first product, it was clear that AI could do a lot already. We were able to gain adoption in our home market of Japan probably faster than in any other legal AI company globally. And we were focused on that very real pain point of the pre-execution contract review, right? A couple of factors helped us. Maybe the fact that we started in a market where contracts were maybe shorter, more predictable, more consistent. That allowed us to gain high levels of accuracy that justified adoption, right?
Yeah.
So that helped us, especially given the older, more how can I say, limited AI options that we had at the time.
Yeah.
But in reality, that allowed us to get really good at contract review in Japanese and English. So much that when Gen AI came on, we already had pretty good accuracy. And
Yeah.
we were then able to add this new option that allowed us to do really quick, very quickly to implement one click redlining with really good accuracy, just around the time as we were expanding into the US.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like, was it a deliberate strategy to focus on accuracy? I think it sounds at this point in time, kind of like a strong suit, a sales point, if you will. But obviously, in dealing with lawyers, accuracy is going to be a big deal. I think that we all. And by the way, I am unfortunately a lawyer. You are not. Is that correct?
I'm not. No,
I
that's
you
right.
are you are brave to embark on a career dealing with lawyers, but we do end up prioritizing accuracy sometimes at the expense of efficiency. Hearing you sort of describe the development of LegalOn and then again the push into the American market, seems like accuracy was a big deal. Was that the main focus, or was that right alongside of efficiency in the decision making and strategy?
Well, we've been working with lawyers, so our founders are corporate lawyers. So the need for um, maybe the need is not for 100% accuracy, but it's we want to give users a solution that actually help them save time, that actually can help them catch issues that they wouldn't otherwise, that can give them that consistency across a team of 10 to make sure that you check consistently across the same items. And unless you can deliver that, it's basically why would I invest in a solution that in the end doesn't feel like I'm actually saving time? So that's been key. But the lawyer, non-lawyer, or the importance of accuracy in legal is definitely critical. But at the same time, I've been dealing. My most of my previous life was in the financial industry, and where accuracy in everything around numbers and getting things right when there's millions of dollars down the line, in a way very similar to contracts, right? So getting things right, getting things to work, and getting things to be efficient. I actually think that the legal space can learn a lot from other areas where technology has been applied. And in reality, the legal department is the last area of the enterprise that is finally getting some technology support. So, yeah, quite a bit can be transferred there.
Yeah, uh, I agree. I agree with that. And out in the market, being market facing, dealing with way more sort of lawyers and customers than I do necessarily, you're better positioned to say that lawyers might be the last, to sort of adapt and adopt technology. You might be the best positioned to kind of say, or the slowest to adapt. However, I agree. I mean, like it for better or for worse. Is Do you have any opinion on why that is?
Well, I wouldn't blame lawyers for that, or at least not entirely, right? It's not like there were great solutions that were being ignored. I think lawyers have been willing to adopt. It's just that there's been very few targeted solutions that address the real needs of lawyers, right? It's been
Mm.
tough to go into the contracts and add value. That's something that AI is now able to do. Um, and I think that now that the option is there, especially on the in-house side, right? Within law firm, there's a question: how does it affect my revenue model and that? But on the in-house side, when we're constrained with resources and basically, very few people will decide to stay longer at night to review a contract. So if there is a solution available, So I don't think it's lawyers refusing to adapt. It's probably
Mm-hmm.
a combination of having solutions that work, that add value, while lawyers being, as they should be, conservative and ensuring that solutions do not threaten things like privacy or other elements. So I think yes, lawyers have been safe in their decisions around the adoption of technology, but it's not all there. It's not the lawyer's fault. It's not like we were ignoring options. Yeah,
I I appreciate so much you're not blaming it entirely on lawyers, whereas I would. I mean, look, kidding aside, um, something there you said that's really interesting is perhaps that lawyers were always kind of willing, and I think the fact that eventually the legal functions and lawyers do adopt technology is proof of that. So they're willing. Maybe the real challenge and the real problem were that the needs and the prioritization of certain factors were not appropriate, whereas other fields might value speed over everything. The conservative legal function might say accuracy and consistency more so than speed.
sure.
So I think that, and maybe again, you're experiencing that out in the market real time, and potentially, I'd argue that LegalOn's growth and success is sort of owed to that. Somebody give you a raise. I think you're making the right decisions. um, we had discussed the sort of the evolution of legal tech out in Japan, and it sort of it had evolved differently out here. Can you talk a little bit more about that, because I think that is super interesting. I think you and I have both seen it. I know that you're a longtime Japanese resident. In spite of Japan's sort of waves of embracing globalism, there is still that language wall. There's still sometimes an information barrier.
Mm.
And even with the incredible accuracy of Google Translate and DeepL, there's still a bit of a barrier to kind of get good, fresh information and understand the market. So I think it would be interesting to hear a bit about your opinions on how legal tech evolved differently out here in Japan.
Sure. So, right, I think we're in a phase where we're seeing a transition today in global, in starting from the U.S. but globally, right? Maybe a shift away from CLM, but I think we can all agree that for the past few years, the big theme in legal tech, definitely the entry point when legal teams were starting to look at potential solutions, potential first investments in legal tech, was CLM, contract lifecycle management. Japan evolved differently because at the time when legal tech was becoming a theme, AI for contract review was available. We were the pioneer in the space. Very quickly, some other players. We have a few copycats in the Japanese market that have emerged. That we, I'm saying it with respect. They're also in the contract review space. So you had viable options that were helping with efficiency and that were easy to implement solutions. And I think there's maybe another element. CLM is great, but it helps a lot of people, especially if you think about the workflow and the post execution. It helps a lot of people, but it doesn't really address the pain of reviewing contracts, which is where
Yeah,
most lawyers will spend 4 hours a day.
yeah,
By having that solution available in the Japanese market, that became the default. And that explains sort of our evolution. So that was what we started with. And from there, we've evolved and we've expanded in particular in our home market of Japan, our first market, to now address more of the needs of the legal team. But
yeah,
that's really been our roots and what we've extended to global markets and where we're still very much focused in the US, UK, and other markets we serve.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that point there on where the lawyer is spending the most hours a day. That really resonates. It hits hard. Going out and saying we need a contract lifecycle management system. We need this CLM. I think that lawyers can appreciate the legal function understands the risk management benefits of that system. But to your point exactly, that's not where they're spending 4 hours, 5 hours a day, right? They are spending that time reading, researching, editing the actual contracts, trying to boil that down to have more substantive discussions with the business side, right? To be a strategic advisor. Um, so I just think it's a really, really important distinction, and it's really interesting for LegalOn specifically and legal tech in Japan, sort of differences in evolution and stuff.
Yep.
Um,
No, I was just going to say, and obviously there are market specifics. Japan has fewer lawyers, so more of a need for that support from technology to guide decisions. So you may have one lawyer leading a team, but in practice, you'll have a higher ratio of paralegals, people with fewer years of legal related experience dealing with important contracts. So the importance of technology being involved, maybe less of a pressure from management around efficiency and reducing team size. So maybe more of a driver of having some actual practical help as to how to review contracts.
yeah.
Where in the US, the US, the UK, and most other markets, the motivation will be how can we be more efficient? How can we save time on contract review um, to focus on these higher value tasks? And if we look at the US with the price of external legal help being so high, how can we save 2 hours in routine contract review and invest it in maybe not the work we'd send to the law firm, but maybe we can use that extra few hours to do a bit more, so we send a bit less and we save a few $1,000s
Mm,
on what is sent out to law firms.
yeah. Sort of smarter resource allocation, which I know that sometimes lawyers bristle at the notion of my work into this contract and my research and knowledge should not be characterized as resource allocation, but it is, right? I mean, I think it's
It's
very
business.
salient. It's business, right?
It's
Like
business.
it's
It's
very
straight up.
tangible. Yeah, right. But see, this is the interesting point. Again, you as a kind of as a non-legal member, which we'll discuss in a little bit, as a non-lawyer, I should say, which there's even sometimes that the usage of that phrase is a little bit incendiary. But it's business. It's business. I think that the lawyers in a big firm, they appreciate that. They get that. They live and die by the billable hour, which we're in the midst of changes in that billable hour model, but they appreciate the business side of the practice of law. Sometimes in-house teams perhaps do not, or they don't appreciate it as much as they should. One quick point there that you did raise that I think would be interesting for listeners is a little bit of the regional distinctions. Out in Japan, there's going to be less lawyers. For an in-house team, you might see less lawyers and more non I would use nice language here, non-law license carrying legal members. Um, you know, do you have you seen that in sort of on the Japan side? And I had imagined that you're having different conversations out in the U.S. offices because it's flipped, right? Way more lawyers in house um, compared to again the sort of a kind of a paralegal or I guess you'd call it more of a legal professional out here in Japan. Have you seen that? Is it very tangible?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, right? So the reality, as you were describing in Japan, so of course the banks, the very large corporates, tend to have a more lawyer-heavy team. But as soon as you go into smaller say even listed companies very often will have a small lawyer to non-lawyer ratio within legal teams. Japan, on top of that, has a tendency to rotate people. So you may even have um, what we consider a non-licensed, but really career contract professional. You'll have some of those for sure, but you'll also that person who's almost parachuted from HR or from another department,
Yeah.
and that's on a mission for 2 years within the legal department, and they are new to contracts,
Yeah.
and they're um, let's say that technology is great, and we're a legal content heavy legal tech provider. We do not provide legal advice, obviously, but we're meant to
Mm,
support decisions, to give information, to guide.
mm.
Like we do this with guidance. For example, when we spot an issue, we provide a suggestion how you may want to handle it. We do provide guidance, which
Yeah.
is great
Yeah.
for non-contract professionals to understand if they're newer to the area, or it's actually quite popular with recent graduates, even
Mm,
recently admitted lawyers that where contracts has not been necessarily the focus of their training. Um,
yeah.
but so that's very that was very valuable and key to our early adoption in Japan. But now what we're seeing is in the US with technology, some teams are, or some newly set up team are saying, what is the ideal setup of my team, right? You definitely
Oh,
want to have
interesting.
someone that knows what they're doing leading, but we're seeing a lot more teams open to a higher ratio of non-lawyers actually reviewing the more standard contracts, right? Because with technology support, it saves lawyers a lot of time, but you can get a paralegal or someone with fewer years of experience around contract with the ability to know when to raise something, or what requires actual lawyer involvement.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so interesting. And again, this that concept of sort of resource allocation and team creation um, is a huge, feels like a very modern shift. I feel like 20, 30 years ago, it was the head lawyer is, that's it. This is a sort of a monarchy setup. The lawyer is the end all be all. But now there's much more of a strategic approach, and that's an international. I think it's kind of true at the international scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, the listeners may not be super familiar with that, that kind of rotation in and out of the legal function, especially listeners out in the United States. It might at one point have seemed crazy that a non-legal would come into the legal function and be handling contracts. But I think that there is growth, and there's also benefit to that. I mean, there's different perspective. There's slightly different focus. I would always argue I loved law school. I don't think you necessarily need, at least for the American model, the full 3 years to be a great legal professional. I I,
Mhm.
I don't know that it's properly necessary. And just one more bit of detail there is, in the American legal system, we learn a bunch of stuff, and in practice, out in the field, we use 10% of the stuff that we learned for across 3 years.
Right.
That's not time efficient. It's not a time efficient educational system. But thinking about, coming back to a couple of points that we've already been discussing about sort of strategy and business sense, is that that is way more important and arguably impactful and useful knowledge when you are out in like an in-house team.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think you were mentioning the particularities of the legal team, the in-house teams, and it's true that it's still very different than many other departments. But you know, this podcast is about legal ops. I think legal operations is behind a lot of that, bringing the moving from the sort of black box that the legal department was often seen
Yeah.
as into
Yeah.
a more business aligned, like reporting on similar metrics type
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
department. And so, yeah, I mean, the demands clearly are becoming greater on the legal department, right? Including
Yeah.
from management realizing that, hey, there's something that AI can do in the legal space as well. So, how are we gaining those efficiencies? Or we're speaking with
Yeah.
GCs all the time that are, if they're not, into it themselves, and if they do not directly realize the benefits, sometimes they get a little nudge from their CEO and saying, "Hey, what's happening in that space?"
And again, there's this conversation so far. There's definitely that sort of the theme of kind of sort of strategy and business. You mentioned business aligned metrics. I by the way, I've been going over the past couple of years more and more down, I guess you'd call it a rabbit hole of understanding, wanting to roll out and use and report on metrics of all kinds. Right? You use the metrics to kind of tell a story, but it is very much, the metrics and kind of whatever sort of dashboards can be the resume, if you will, for that legal team and that legal function. You still tell a story on top of the metrics, but you got to have the hard data, and you got to have a bit of the narrative. There's qualitative, quantitative factors here at play, which is arguably a good segue into something that we discussed in preparation for this call, which is distinction between sort of perceived versus actual benefit, right? I think you, and we've already been talking about it here today, have often in parts of your career have been the non-technical member, but you still have your business hat. You're still sort of looking at metrics. And I think that there is a bit of that tension that maybe you've sort of seen out in the market with respect to kind of LegalOn. We can save you X amount of time. That's the hard metrics. What does it feel like? Hey, lawyer, what does that feel like, right? You're almost appealing to two very different crowds. Perhaps the CFO is
Mm.
metrics. I see the numbers. I want to save that. But if the lawyer team says, if that legal team says, it doesn't feel like it's saving time. It feels like the same rough amount of work, but just distributed differently, right? That can be quite challenging. I wonder if you had any other sort of comments on that. I know that we've already kind of talked a little bit about the prioritization of accuracy for the legal teams, but again, the feeling like you save time versus actually saving time.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start by mentioning that then this is more of an observation as someone who's worked now, obviously in legal tech for a little while, but throughout my career, I've worked really closely when in banking with my legal counsel, and lawyers are sort of trained, or at least used to, accept doing the painful, time-consuming work. It, if you take a step back, it's ridiculous to have a legal team add a name and an address to a contract, right? And to have do some that really admin work, right? That someone
Yeah,
else can do. You don't need one of the highest trained, most the most valuable resources of the company to be doing something that's really basic, but people
yeah,
get there's so I think lawyers are used to accept a lot of things that may be unacceptable to other areas. So, and maybe that changes the perception of that measure of efficiency, right?
mm,
Just for context, that's sort of an observation I have, that lawyers will tend to accept a few extra clicks than perhaps other people would, right? a senior, a GC may accept doing a couple extra steps, where a head of sales would be like, I need that report exactly that way. And if it's not, if I don't get what I need with that one click, uh, I'm not happy. Um, but yeah, I think we're at that level where technology can really be transformative. We have evolved over time, but let's say that if you're really still working with Word and Outlook, um, we get reports of up to 85% efficiency and time savings, right? Obviously, that depends on the type of contract you deal with. But you can really get value quickly. If you don't have playbooks, we're able to provide you a starting point so that you're 75% of the way to build your own playbooks so that you can get that value. So yes, maybe maybe lawyers have had that feeling that you need a maybe technology is not ready, or where am I think there's some willingness, right, to be spending time on more interesting things than just
Mm,
NDA, but or more your MSAs, or the contract review. um, it's I guess it's really, I think, a good time to look at what technology can do and what leaders in tech can provide and how transformative it can be. Because now, if eh, our clients that work with us after a few weeks do tell us, like, how could I do this before, or yeah, how did I ever do this without technology?
yeah, that's interesting too. There is a, I think, regardless of the team, your background, or your position in the market, there is that sense of a lot of people don't know what they don't know. How did I do this before this new way?
Yeah.
You just didn't know what was possible. Don't be hard on yourself. It's absolutely not critical. Um, they I think there is perhaps a conservative or an overly process oriented mindset, as you put it. Maybe lawyers are far more willing to accept a few more clicks, which I absolutely love, compared to compared to sales, who will be like one click. I just want one click. Um, I think that could be part of it, but I think a bigger part of it is there's people just don't know, right? And it's an eternal battle from your position in the market. It's an internal battle, being part of an in-house team as well, trying to kind of get people on board some transformative initiative. Um, yeah, I sometimes I've heard this phrasing: we got to show them the art of the possible.
Mm.
I that's very grandiose, and I do like that, but I put it in terms of just education. Did you know we can do a couple things to save your time? Did you actually know
Yeah.
that? It's a question, and it's an entry. But we have different perspectives on the market, but in some respects, maybe we're fighting a similar battle. I find that estimates of using metrics and sort of estimates of time savings. I think I can save you this much time. That is an important factor, but I also need to create this kind of a feeling. Did you know that this could be so much easier
Mm.
and save you time?
Yeah.
um, yeah. You Let's switch gears a bit. You have been out in Japan quite a while, and I'd like you to just kind of share for a few minutes some of your, you know, professional experience, especially because I think it is a little bit informative, um, kind of how you ended up in LegalOn, but
Mm.
also some of you've made allusions to it already, of kind of working in a banking function and swimming through seas of paper. Um, so, if you don't mind, a kind of a couple minutes walking us through a bit of the most traumatic, slow, admin heavy parts of your career up till now.
Sure. So I'll give the very short story. I'm originally from Canada, came to Japan at the age of 17 on an exchange, changed my life, and ended up starting my career here in Japan. That was in finance with Lehman Brothers at the time. It was early 2000s, and I'm a systems guy. I'm a process guy. I worked on the equity side, but was very quickly involved with projects. It was um, after 9/11, the whole KYC concept came in. How do we organize data? How do we have
Mm.
workflows to open new accounts that we check on documents? So the whole compliance thing was big. Golden source of data. So having one place where you can rely, so product pricing data, so that all system could rely on the same source. So a lot of really cool technology, a lot of money going into that technology piece. And Lehman at the time, Tokyo was the regional headquarter. Asia was the biggest growing continent. So lots of money coming in, huge technology teams in the US. So I was, as a more of a business background person, I was leading large technology teams here as the non-tech guy, and really connecting the Asia requirements with the global team. So that's where I started. Did my MBA, did a bit of an entrepreneurial stint for a year, ended up coming back into finance again, leading projects, and I've been a banker. And what brought me really into legal tech is the LIBOR repapering, going back 3 4 years. So where we repapered thousands of relatively basic agreements, we spent millions on having armies of lawyers basically reading through, having our operations team actually skim through contracts first, having legal teams then amend in a way that really would have been unacceptable to pretty much other any other department, right? Really inefficient. And so that was my clear message, my clear sign that legal needed better technology.
Yeah.
And right around that time, I was introduced. I met our founder here at LegalOn. There was already this great traction on the Japan side. Uh, this is 3 years back. We were already at 3,000 clients. We had already close to 25% of all listed entities in Japan working with us.
Oof. Wow.
So, clear sign that when you can bring good technology, it makes a difference, and clients are interested. Already available in English. So was a no the eh, my experience, dealing with the complexities of being a global company,
Yeah.
rolling out technology across markets, and the need around good technology and legal made it an obvious choice for me to join.
Let me ask you a bit more. A couple questions around that the LIBOR repapering adventures. At that point in time, was that post MBA?
That was post MBA, yes.
So because you had mentioned that at least now you're very much a kind of a process guy, which I resonates with me. I think that I'm a process person as well. Were you looking again at the time at that work as as a little puzzle? Were you looking at it and kind of saying, well, this again seems inefficient. Can we do this faster, cheaper, better? Or is it after the fact you now realize, oh, I just saw that was painful, and I wish it could have been better. But again, your process glasses on, did you see it as a problem at the time, or was it?
So this really goes back into my early days in my career, but it happened to be in the finance sector. But I can see it really apply to what's happening in the legal space now, or I think it's a good reference to what's happening in what is happening or what could be happening in the legal space now. right? So it's early 2000s, right? We're starting to deal with really complex problems, and we have great technology that can help, and we've got ops teams, right? And until then, it had been the ops team sort of tells IT what is needed, IT builds it, and sort of that cycle. So what we
Yeah.
did is we put the tech team and the ops teams together, and we were able to sort of bridge. This is where technology can do, but we need ops people to sort of validate. When you have systems that depend on really critical data, similar to, we can leverage AI, but sometimes we like to have that human in the loop to make sure that that
Yeah.
particular field that we've confirmed, right? Or when you get conflicting data from two sources, have that human make the call. So
Yep.
that's what we were doing in early 2000s in practice. And I guess that idea of having the machine doing as much as possible, but the human being there where it matters, was something that I saw the usefulness of from very early in my career.
Yeah.
So that process the process is a combination of your technology and what the lawyers do in legal, right?
Yeah.
So, and too often we see those things sort of as separate. So, yeah.
Yeah. We see them as separate, and they aren't, and they shouldn't be. The oft referred to framework of people process technology, right? Like the three pillars. And maybe this is, we can talk about it now, but going back to your story in the early 2000s of just looking kind of ops and tech completely separate, and they're going back and forth. It reminds me of the movie Office Space, where
Mm,
one guy takes the customer requirements and then he gives them to the tech side. Well, what does he do? Well, it's a very important function. He gives them to the tech side, but there's no value added there, right? Because they were separate functions, as opposed to combining those things, which we a lot of people do now. And maybe that is also the result of just the evolution of technology and how ingrained it is into most white collar work every minute of every day.
mm,
But you might have been a bit of an adventurous trailblazer back in the day of just put ops and tech people, get them talking together. I mean, that's a large part of the whole legal operations field now, right?
yep,
It's absolutely vital now, but it would have been perhaps a bit unusual back in the day. And look,
mm,
it unquestionably, it leads to conversations that need to be had. Um, I do find, I used to have an IT background. I did first level help desk support in and after college. I started to sort of climb a sort of a tech ladder and get some Microsoft certifications. Um, I did find, and still do find sometimes, that IT, and by the way, my old IT knowledge is just all virtually useless these days in the sort of the rapid evolution of Gen AI,
mm,
but still often IT teams may not speak the language of the rest of the business. Which is a tough thing. Absolutely vital, indispensable, but you would still need, they still need to be working with other people. They still need to be communicating with the business in the right way. Because if they don't, there is some tool, some solution that is built, rolled out, not used. And guess what? Internal client unhappy, IT, is confused why the client's not using it. Waste of time and effort. C
mm,
suite says, why did this project die? Everyone involved is in the wrong, right? Like, would it perhaps it was just a bit of more of communication and a bit more of a sensitivity to sort of needs. And anyways, it's a bit of going down a bit of a philosophical rabbit hole. A couple things that you had mentioned that I did want to get back to, which is playbooks. And speaking of process, and actually kind of touching back on people process technology, I've heard it said, I do not claim this. I've heard it said, don't digitize a bad process because you're going to get a digital bad process. Go try to optimize the work itself, the decision making itself, and then move that over to the digital space. Um, I don't see that enough. I think that is right, but I do see in and around legal work, I do see the playbook as a material, pivotal platform that is a way to optimize the process. When we talk about these abstract positions and these decisions for this to sort of contract in this sort of situation, we do ABC. Um, and everyone knows that, but for some reason that's not put, that knowledge is not put in any one place, and the playbook can be that that material output that is a way to really talk about kind of workflow optimization. And then if you have that, I feel like the rest of the stuff around contract development and management and even all the way into contract signing is improved. You had mentioned that you all do and can help with sort of playbooks. But I think, had you also mentioned that you also feel like you don't see enough playbooks, or am I misquoting you?
Well, basically, you said a couple of interesting things, but regarding playbooks. So we obviously support our clients' playbooks. The
Hmm.
reality is that a lot of corporates do not have playbooks or don't have complete playbooks, don't have AI ready playbooks. Maybe they're too high level, not granular enough for AI to actually help you spot the items. Or maybe you have, if you deal with one or two high volume type of contracts, you may have well-defined playbooks for those, but not for the rest of the 10 other contracts that you see on a less frequent basis. So what we do is we have legal content teams in the US. We have UK content, we have Japan law content that are ready to use, right? So really detailed playbooks to which that act as a starting point that you can then customize, add your own company specific items to, so that you're up and ready to go in half a day rather than a
Yeah.
2 week period. And what we're
Yeah.
seeing, it's true that you don't want to automate a bad process, but if you don't have playbooks or if your playbook is incomplete, um, I don't think it should stop you from starting to leverage tools. We're seeing smaller legal teams sort of add items as they go and say, "Oh, of course, there's this other things that this other item that I'll always check for. So let's add an item for it." And then that item you don't have to worry about
Yeah.
for subsequent contracts. So the automating, if you're, for example, doing a major CLM integration, definitely do not replicate a bad process. But if you're addressing your contract review needs, let's say that the hurdle is a lot lower.
And inside of there too is a little, there's a slight bias towards get started with something, right? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of good, and especially relative to how big or vital that workflow is. I that It's another thing that just resonates with me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Perfection is the enemy of progress, and you want to be able to leverage what's available out there. So, absolutely.
A couple more minutes. I think we had talked about LegalOn specifically. Some review features. Obviously, the pivotal nature of playbooks, red line and one click. Which, by the I love as a concept. Again, is the lawyer part of me is just absolutely red line one click.
Mm.
Um, and I think, is it true there's some mysterious product upgrades or big news happening soon? You can't go into details, but it's kind of a watch this space.
So there's a lot happening. A lot of people don't realize this, but LegalOn is a really big team. So we have close to 600 people working on
Oh,
this across the U.S. and Japan. So we are one of the largest teams in the space, with a very heavy AI, legal content, and development team. So we're working on a lot of stuff. A lot of focus has been on making our whole experience around review a lot better, a lot smoother, a lot more accurate, right? And that's the review itself. It's the assistant, the legal on assistant that allows you to interact with your contract. It's having more skills, having more options to better align with the way lawyers work, right? Whether in Word, whether in our web interface. Um, in our Japanese market, where we are the dominant legal tech player, we are bigger than any other company. So we really address the full needs of clients. In most other markets, we decided to stay focused on the review piece, which is where people feel the most pain. But we have a lot of great technology that's available, and that selectively over time, when it makes sense for our global audience, we will be rolling out. We're supporting a lot more clients across countries, a lot more clients like globally across countries. Again, having that relationship with over 25% of listed entities. A lot of those are the global players. Yeah, there's a lot happening, looking at how the experience can become more agentic, where you are involved where you need to, but when um, the AI can reliably do part of the work where you bring less value. So that's something that we're really excited about and where we're investing a lot of our resources.
look, this is good, exciting, sort of properly innovative news. To make you sit through an uncomfortable compliment for a second, I think, I'd reached out to you a couple months ago. LegalOn did an event, a very big, legal tech event. Um, my personal opinion, I think it is very easy to do those events kind of half-heartedly, and not very interesting. I attended the Legal On event virtually, and I thought it was absolutely great. I reached out to you. I look the content, the design, the speakers. I thought everything was great, and I had mentioned to you that I thought it was a good look for not only legal technology and legal operations, but also for Japan. You and I've both lived out in Japan for quite a while, and it's just really cool. It's really exciting. I'm as a member of this kind of professional community. I'm excited that there's cool, much smarter people than me, like you, out in the space. I'm working for organizations like LegalOn.
No, and Daryl, I really appreciated your message on the day. So we had over 5,000 participants. So
Ooh.
it was a hybrid thing. I think we had around 500 in present physically, and a large crowd attending online. Yeah, we were very proud. This was, I believe, our largest event to date, and a sign that there is a lot of interest in technology, and that when you bring good content, we had a great lineup of speakers that day. So it wasn't only us; it was really us sharing the experience of many,
Yeah.
or facilitating that communication. So that event happened in Japan. We had more content in English, but the challenge for us, and which is a great and fun challenge, and I think you'll relate to that, is where Um, Sometimes we're perceived as having sort of a Japanese side and an American side, and going forward a more UK side. But how do we really come across as one? And how do we deliver the value and the full potential of our larger team as a product that can be then of higher value to our users across the different geographies? And by the way, we're already seeing so much benefit in the fact that we have a strong team in the US, great leadership, starting from Daniel, the product team, the AI team there, and the team on the Japan side, is we're really learning a great deal from each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of innovation coming from the US, great processes coming from Japan, and having that healthy, really one feeds the other type of thing. And to be honest, as someone who plays a bit of a bridging role at time,
Mhm.
it's a great pleasure to be part of that.
To kind of bring us to a close, and I feel like the different geographies and the different geographical teams, and even the sort of the different hats and roles that maybe you or I occupy. Um, I want to. I have to get this out there because I thought it was brilliant. This is something that you said, and I'm attributing this quote to you for the rest of time. Lawyers are lawyers before anything else. We were talking about sort of efficiencies and geographic variations and levels of seniority and strategic thinking, but sometimes on some levels, even before I'm American, I'm a lawyer, and it killed me. I think it's right. I think it is. Did you have any other
Yeah,
pearls of wisdom to share?
and well, I think that's an important point. So 2022, we have this great traction in our home market. We're approaching the US, largest legal market in the world. We're approaching it in a confident but very humble manner, right? Looking to build a great local team that can guide us, because we don't want it to be we need to be a perfect fit for the American users, and with the intention of building on our American base for the rest of the world. And we started ready to rebuild our product from scratch. But because lawyers are lawyers before being American or Japanese or German, the way the contracting problem is being approached is very consistent. So our UI, our sort of the way we approached, we had built things with that lawyer mindset,
Yeah,
was transferable with minimal adjustments. We did, of course, adjust for, we did tweak a lot of things, right,
yeah,
to optimize. But in reality, what we changed for the US, we brought back. So
yeah.
that we now have a very consistent experience.
I,
Um, yeah,
I love that, finally, that again, that bridge function. I think a lot of professionals out in Japan do that fill that role. But also, as you point out, that sort of almost cross pollinating, right? Back and forth. It's fantastic. I love it.
absolutely.
I don't want to keep you too much longer. So let me just say, I thought it was a fantastic conversation, and I'd just like to thank you for your time.
Great pleasure, Daryl. Thanks so much.